Why did human history unfold so differently on different continents? In his groundbreaking book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond tackles this monumental question, a question sparked by a conversation with Yali, a charismatic New Guinean politician who asked, "Why is it that you white people developed so much cargo and brought it to New Guinea, but we black people had little cargo of our own?" For centuries, answers to such questions often veered into racist explanations, suggesting inherent differences in intelligence or capability. Diamond compellingly argues against this, proposing instead that the disparities in power and technology among human societies are not due to biological differences, but to differences in continental environments. This book reveals how geography and biogeography shaped the destinies of peoples. It's not about inherent superiority, but about the luck of the draw, the plants, animals, and even the orientation of the continents themselves. By understanding these deep-rooted environmental factors, you can grasp why some societies developed agriculture, domesticated animals, and consequently, the tools of conquest, guns, germs, and steel long before others. This perspective offers a powerful lens to view the broad patterns of human history and the world we live in today, free from prejudiced assumptions. The first crucial step in understanding these divergent histories is recognizing the transformative power of food production. For most of human history, everyone was a hunter-gatherer, constantly on the move. But around 11,000 years ago, some groups began to cultivate crops and domesticate animals. This shift was revolutionary. Agriculture allowed people to settle in one place and produce far more food per acre than hunting and gathering ever could. More food meant larger, denser populations. This surplus didn't just feed more mouths, it freed up individuals from the daily grind of finding food. These people could become specialists, craftsmen, soldiers, priests, and leaders. Sedentary life also allowed for shorter birth intervals, further boosting population growth. Societies with food production could therefore support larger numbers and develop more complex social structures, laying the groundwork for future technological and political advancements. They had more people to innovate, to fight, and to build. Next, consider why food production arose in some places and not others, or at vastly different times. A major reason lies in what Diamond calls geographic luck, specifically the availability of suitable wild plants and animals for domestication. Eurasia, particularly the Fertile Crescent, was exceptionally fortunate. It was home to a high concentration of wild ancestors of valuable crops like wheat and barley, and animals like goats, sheep, pigs, and cattle. These species were not only present, but also relatively easy to domesticate. Diamond introduces the Anna Karenina principle to explain why so few animals were domesticated. Just as Tolstoy observed that all happy families are alike, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. A wild animal species needs many suitable traits to be a good candidate for domestication. Failure in just one trait, like a nasty disposition, think zebras, a slow growth rate, elephants, reluctance to breed in captivity, cheetahs, or a tendency to panic, gazelles, makes domestication impractical. Eurasia simply had more happy candidates than other continents like the Americas, which lost most of its large mammals in the late Pleistocene, or Australia, which had very few to begin with. Beyond the initial availability of domesticable species, another critical aspect of geographic luck was the ease with which agriculture and domesticated species could spread. Here, the orientation of the continents played a decisive role. Eurasia has a predominantly east-west axis. This means that crops, animals, and technologies could spread relatively easily across vast distances, because locations at similar latitudes share similar day lengths, seasons, climates, and even diseases. A crop domesticated in the Fertile Crescent, for instance, could thrive in Western Europe or the Indus Valley. In contrast, the Americas and Africa have a primarily north-south axis. Spreading crops and animals along this axis is much harder because it involves crossing drastically different climatic zones. A plant adapted to the tropics of Central America would struggle in the temperate zones of North America. This geographic reality significantly slowed the diffusion of agricultural innovations and other technologies in these continents. Another crucial aspect is the lethal gift of livestock, germs. The close and prolonged contact between dense human populations and their domesticated animals, like cattle and pigs, provided a fertile ground for animal microbes to jump to humans and evolve into uniquely human diseases. Smallpox, measles, and influenza, for example, likely originated from diseases of Eurasian livestock. Over centuries, Eurasian populations developed some immunity to these crowd diseases. However, when Eurasians began exploring and colonizing other parts of the world, they brought these germs with them. Peoples in the Americas and Australia, who had very few or no domesticated animals, and thus no prior exposure to these pathogens, had no immunity. The result was catastrophic epidemics that decimated indigenous populations, often paving the way for European conquest far more effectively than guns or steel alone. This one-sided exchange of germs became a powerful, albeit unintentional weapon. Building on this, food surpluses generated by agriculture were the bedrock upon which complex societies were built. With a reliable food supply, not everyone needed to be a farmer. This allowed for the emergence of specialists, people who could dedicate their time to other pursuits. Some became craftsmen, developing new technologies like pottery for storing food, and eventually metallurgy, leading to the creation of metal tools and weapons like steel. Others became priests or political leaders. As societies grew larger and more complex, new forms of organization were needed. This led to the development of chiefdoms and, eventually, states. Diamond terms these early states kleptocracies, where elites managed to extract resources from the masses, often legitimizing their rule through ideology or religion, while also providing some benefits like order and large-scale project management. Writing, another hallmark of complex societies, often arose initially as a tool for record-keeping in these states. Like agriculture and technology, writing also spread more easily across Eurasia, further empowering its societies. The main takeaway of this book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, is that the vastly different historical trajectories of human societies across continents were primarily shaped by environmental factors, not by innate differences in people. The availability of domesticable plants and animals, the orientation of continental axes facilitating or hindering diffusion, and the subsequent development of germs, technology, and complex political structures all stemmed from these initial geographic and biogeographic disparities. By understanding these deep environmental roots, you gain a profound new perspective on why world history unfolded the way it did, and why power became distributed so unevenly across the globe. Alright, that's a wrap on today's summary. Thanks for listening. If this book summary sparked your curiosity or gave you new insights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss our next summary. Keep reading, keep growing, and see you in the next one.